Have you ever wondered what the fastest way to learn and improve Spanish is? Because when I first started learning, I thought that it was all about grammar, studying, spending hours of textbooks, flashcards, listening exercises, all of that stuff. And don't get me wrong, they all helped me in my journey. But the thing that accelerated my Spanish more than anything else was something, let's say, I never expected. Taxi drivers.
Es nuestra primera vez en la ciudad de Benidorm.
Okay.
¿Qué tal? ¿Qué podemos esperar?
Seriously, some of the best conversations that I've ever had in Spanish have been in the back of taxis. And so today, I'm going to explain why I think every Spanish learner should start talking to taxi drivers when in a Spanish-speaking country. So right now, I'm here in Valencia. And in a little while, I'm going to jump into a taxi myself and put all of this into practice. But first, allow me to tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I moved to Medellín in Colombia for a couple of months because I wanted to immerse myself in Spanish-speaking culture. Now, at this time, I wasn't fluent, not even close. So I rented this tiny Airbnb. It cost me a couple of £100 a month. As you can imagine, it wasn't glamorous. In fact, it was pretty dark. There weren't any windows. Regardless, none of that mattered. I wasn't there for luxury. I was there to learn Spanish. So every morning I'd wake up, make a coffee, and spend hours studying. We're talking grammar, vocabulary. I'd sit there, just imagine, in this little apartment with no windows, trying to cram as much Spanish into my brain as possible. Then every afternoon, I'd force myself outside. And the reason I did that is because I quickly realized that you don't become a Spanish speaker by only studying Spanish, okay? You become a Spanish speaker by, guess what? Speaking Spanish. And that is where the taxis came in, right? I'd order an Uber or jump in a yellow taxi, which were abundant throughout Medellín, and I'd start making myself converse, right? Every single ride, every single time I got in a taxi, I would treat it like a window to practice my Spanish, to practice speaking. And at first it was terrifying, or quite overwhelming. I'd rehearse one sentence before getting in, like, hola, ¿cómo está? ¿Cómo estamos? Simple enough. And the driver would answer. I'd understand only about half of what the driver would say to me, but I was smiling throughout. Inside I was panicking. But every taxi felt like a mini Spanish-speaking lesson. Now, the amazing thing about taxi drivers is that they are professional conversationalists. Think about it. They spend all day talking to strangers. So they know how to keep a conversation moving, right? They're curious, they're usually very friendly. And when they realize you're learning Spanish, forget about it. Most of them become your biggest cheerleaders, right? So another reason I love practicing in taxis is because you're not sat opposite somebody. You're not making that awkward eye contact, which can be quite overwhelming. Rather, you're both looking forwards and you're watching the city go by together, right? So there's something much less intimidating about that. You don't feel like you're being examined per se. You're just chatting casually. And because the journey has a beginning and an end, there's much less pressure. Even if the conversation completely falls apart, you're only together for about 10 or 15 minutes, however long the journey is, right? So that varies. But then once it's done, you're gone. You don't have to see each other again, or it's a very clean sort of interaction that has a beginning and an end, and that's that. I genuinely believe those taxi rides improved my Spanish more than hours of studying ever did. I became comfortable speaking. And that's the biggest hurdle for most learners, is actually overcoming the fear of talking. It's not about knowing the words, it's about having the confidence to actually integrate them and use them. So how do you actually start a conversation? Well, here's the mistake I see quite a lot of learners make. They ask questions that only have one-word answers. For example, is Colombia nice? Is Valencia nice? The driver might say, sí. Conversation over, right? Instead, ask questions that sort of invite a story. And let me show you a few of my favorites, right? So the first one is, has it been very hot lately? ¿Ha hecho mucho calor últimamente? ¿Ha hecho mucho calor últimamente? Weather might seem boring, but everybody has an opinion on the weather. So maybe they'll tell you it's the hottest summer they've ever experienced. Or maybe they'll complain that it's been raining non-stop for weeks and oh, está horrible. Either way, you're talking. Now, the second question I really love to ask is it busy this time of year? And even if I know the answer to that question, it doesn't matter. 90% of the questions I ask taxi drivers are questions I already know the answer to. So yeah, I'd ask them, has it been busy this time of year? ¿Hay mucho turismo en esta época del año? Is there a lot of tourism in this time of the year? And another question I would often like to ask is, what's a typical dish from the region? So, ¿cuál es el plato típico de esta región? What is the typical dish of this region? And that's because people are proud of their local food, aren't they? You'll often end up getting recommendations for little family restaurants that you'd otherwise completely miss online. And another question I had that I wanted to share with you guys was, what's your favorite place in the city? Every taxi driver loves to answer that question. ¿Cuál es su lugar favorito en la ciudad? So again, there isn't really a wrong answer. People love talking about where they live. Where do you recommend that I visit? ¿Qué me recomienda visitar? ¿Qué me recomienda visitar? Yeah, people love recommending their favorite places. So nothing quite gets a taxi driver excited like asking them where their favorite place is, what their favorite dish is. Figuratively speaking, you can see their tails wagging when you ask these kinds of questions. So don't just ask these questions, listen to the answer, okay? And I know that sounds obvious, but when we're learning a new language, we're often so busy thinking about what we're going to say that we sort of forget to listen. And throughout that process of listening, just remember to relax. You don't need to understand every word that you're hearing. Just try and understand the general idea. Because believe you me, as a learner, you're not going to understand every word. The skill is in being able to pick out and pluck the essential words that give you the gist of what's being said. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, just remember, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be interested and engaged. So, right then, anyway, enough talking. There's a taxi rank just beneath where I'm staying. I'm going to jump in one now and put everything we've just talked about into practice. So I genuinely have no idea where the conversation will go. Yeah, maybe the taxi driver will be really chatty. They might not be chatty at all and might not say much. But that's the beauty of real conversations, right? They are unpredictable. So, vamos.
Hola amigo, ¿cómo está?
¿Nos puede llevar al casco antiguo, por favor? La verdad es que apenas llegamos y pues quisiera saber o quisiera conocer pues la zona más turística, si nos puede dejar ahí.
Voy a dejar en las torres de Quart.
A mí me parece muy bien.
Porque ahí...
Es complicado la situación de...
No, pero de ahí entráis directos a lo que es el Carmen.
Ah, perfecto. Eso sería genial. Sí. Ahorita me voy a dirigir a la playa, pues...
Sí.
¿Hay un paseo marítimo?
Sí, muy bonito. Sí, y tenéis la zona del puerto, que ahí hay muchos restaurantes, hay para tomar copa, lo que quieras.
No, hermano, Valencia parece una ciudad que... Es que es una ciudad que lo tiene todo, sí o sí.
Eso es lo bueno, tiene todo.
Cuenta con una playa,
sí,
con un casco antiguo. Bueno, vamos a verlo en breve, pero...
El casco antiguo de Valencia es de los más grandes de Europa.
Ay.
Sí, está ahí compitiendo con el de Florencia.
Y bueno, lo bueno es que no parece tan congestionado como Barcelona.
No, un poco menos.
Estuve ahí hace un mes y uy, se nota la congestión.
No, es diferente.
Diferente.
Sí.
Más turística, ¿no? Bueno, se ha vuelto más turística la ciudad de Valencia últimamente.
Valencia demasiado.
Ay.
Demasiado. Pero está bien.
Y
lo bueno de Valencia es que tiene 3 zonas muy separadas. Tienes la zona antigua,
sí,
que empezamos de aquí para adelante.
Sí.
Luego tienes la zona nueva. Que es
¿La zona cuál?
La zona nueva es la Ciudad de las Artes.
Ah, ya, ok.
Y eso no lo habéis visto, ¿no?
No.
Eso es muy bonito. Tenéis que ir y pasear y Y luego tenemos la zona de la playa. Entonces tenemos la gente en los 3 sitios separados. Es lo bueno que no es una ciudad con una zona solo. Y está todo el mundo ahí.
Cuenta con 3 distintas caras.
Claro, es lo bueno.
Wow.
Separa todo.
¿Y usted nació aquí?
Sí.
Ay, qué guay.
Mira, ahí son las torres de Quar.
Míralo.
Le llamamos torres porque se quedaron las torres solo. Pero eso era una puerta al reino de Valencia.
Ay, qué belleza.
Esto era un reino. De las películas.
Y estamos hablando de hace cuánto tiempo, cuándo se construyó.
600 años, algo así. Creo, sí, 1400.
Perdón, me has dicho 300 años.
600.
¿600 años?
Sí, 500, 600 creo.
Uf.
De hecho, mira, si ves ahí, ves la altura de la muralla.
Sí, lo veo.
Todo eso era la muralla.
Ay, qué maravilla.
Todo el reino. Y esta es una de las puertas que ahora es una torre. Se llama las torres.
Wow. Bueno.
Mira, os dejo aquí. Para esto ya. Os explico un momento lo que tenéis que hacer. A ver. Mira, estamos aquí.
Justo ahí, sí, justo
Torres
aquí.
de Quar.
Ok.
Vais a tirar todo recto, ¿vale? Que es la calle Quar. Todo recto, caballeros, todo recto. Y aquí llegáis a la plaza de la Mare de Déu, que es la plaza de la Virgen.
Ok, la plaza principal
Sí.
del casco antiguo.
Es más casi, más o menos.
Ok.
Luego, ahí yo de vosotros cogería la recta y saldría para ver las torres de Serrano, que son como estas, pero el doble de grandes.
Imagínate.
O sea, es como esto, pero el doble.
Ay.
Y luego volvería a la plaza para ir todo recto hacia la Plaza de la Reina.
Hacia la Plaza de la Reina.
Sí, que es donde se ve la Catedral de Valencia.
Ok.
Es donde está el cáliz.
Ok.
Supuestamente el cáliz de Jesús está en esta catedral. Y luego, si seguís todo recto, por aquí llegáis a la Plaza del Ayuntamiento, que para mí es la más bonita.
Ok, la plaza del
Ayuntamiento.
del ayuntamiento.
¿Vale?
Ayuntamiento.
O sea, mira, Torres de Serrano, Plaza de la Virgen, Plaza de la Reina, Plaza Ayuntamiento.
Listo.
Con eso, en una hora...
Bueno, es un buen plan.
Mucho. Sí.
Wow, una buena ruta.
Sí, te lo recomiendo así.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias por pues, informarnos.
Nada, mucho gusto.
¿Y sería posible pagarte con tarjeta?
Sí, claro.
Bueno, hasta ahora lo bueno de Valencia es la gente. La gente es muy
Muy
muy simpática.
¿no?
Esa.
Sí, es por el clima.
Por el clima, sí, será por el clima.
¿Quieres copiar?
No hace falta.
No, bueno.
Todo bien. Muchísimas gracias, caballero.
Cuando lleguéis a la Plaza de la Virgen,
Sí.
si cogéis la calle esa que hay una horchatería que se llama Subies.
Ok.
Es muy buena la horchatería.
Ok. Definitivamente, sin duda, vamos
Sí.
a echarle un
Se
vistazo.
llama horchatería Subies.
Ok.
Está muy buena y tienes que coger la horchata mixta.
Mixta, la
Que es
horchata
líquida
mixta.
y congelada.
Uy.
¿Vale? Y
No
un
veo la hora de probarla.
Y un fartón para mojar.
Ok, listo.
¿Vale? Yo lo
Listo.
recomiendo.
Muchísimas gracias. Que tengas una buena tarde.
Igualmente.
Bueno, viajeros, ya llegamos a la Plaza de la Virgen. And as you can see, that taxi driver was very friendly, shared with us some tips that we wouldn't have otherwise received. But most importantly, it just goes to show you how easy it is to converse with taxi drivers. Fantastic way to not only practice your Spanish, but gain more confidence as you go. So, next time you're abroad, get chatting. Hasta la próxima.